Mental note, whenever you're doing an internet show where you review stuff, make sure the thing you're going to review actually works before you announce that you're going to review it. Like, I mean, this here is Action Fighter. It's a game by Sega made in 1987, though my version comes from 89, basically just rapid fire, extra features, stuff like that. But I can't get it working on any of my systems that I can capture video from. The only system I can get it working from is an old Tandy system, and the video quality is terrible. So I can't review it. So how about instead, let's review a platformer from Apogee. This here is Dark Ages, and while there's nothing too particularly special about this game, it is an interesting case study into the differences between PC games and console games of the time. Like, I mean, when this game came out, there was already the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis out there, and they had platformers that would just blow this one out of the water. But then at the same time, the PC had 3D games like Stunts, which were just miles ahead of anything 3D on the consoles at the time. So it's an interesting contrast between the way the systems varied at the time. Nowadays, PC and console games are pretty much identical, so it doesn't matter anymore. But back then it was a difference, and this game, while it is kind of, as you can see on the screen, the motion isn't really smooth or anything, there's some interesting points, so we'll go into them, but first let's take a look at the game stats. Dark Ages was developed by Scenario Software and published by Apogee in 1991. It's a one-player run-and-gun platformer, and it features 320 by 200 by 16 color EGA graphics. It uses both ad-lib music and PC speaker sound at the same time, which was actually a pretty common thing to do before the Sound Blaster cards really took off and introducing digitized sound and everything. And as for its release date, as of March 20th, 2009, this game is freeware. You can download it for free from www.3drealms.com. And there's a whole bunch of other Apogee stuff either free to download there or still for sale as shareware, so make sure you check it out. So as you might expect, this game does actually have a story. Basically, while you're a child, an evil wizard by the name of Garth, no, not that Garth, sends you away to be raised by peasants in order to conceal your birthright to the throne of the kingdom, which would be all fine and well for him, except for the fact that one of those quote-unquote peasants happens to be a hero of the land, who then teaches you the ways of combat and magic, so that when you're old enough, you can go up against Garth, kick his butt, and take your place as rightful heir to the kingdom, thus restoring peace and tranquility to all the land. Isn't that how it always goes? Anyways, as you've seen so far, the game is pretty simple. All you gotta do is move left and right, or go through doors, or fire your magic spells, or jump around a bit. And while it does look like the game probably doesn't play that well because, you know, it's not moving that smoothly at all, everything's moving in half-block increments, that can actually be a blessing in disguise. This was common with a lot of games that came out around this time for the PC, and the thing is that because of that half-block movement going on, you can very accurately position yourself for any of the jumps you want to make or to make sure an enemy doesn't hit you. Because, let's face it, there's nothing more annoying than when you're playing a normal platformer and you happen to be just 1 or 2 pixels too close to an enemy, and then they hit you and then you get hurt. In this game, you don't have to worry about that. Well, okay, you can still get hurt by enemies, but you can't be 1 or 2 pixels too close. You have to be at least half a block too close, or they're just not going to hit you. And the objective isn't too complicated either. Like, I mean, all you have to do is either get to the end of the level and go through a doorway to reach the next section, or just go past a boundary which suddenly changes everything for some mysterious reason. Or sometimes there's just a old man waiting around wanting you to fetch something for him, like a key, or a shield, or an ankh, or an apple? Seriously, he wants you to fetch an apple for him. Who does this guy think you are, his personal slave? Old men aside, though, there's really not too much to this game. There's not too many enemies that you have to deal with, and there's only 3 different weapons. The main weapon you start with is just basically these blue pulses that you shoot, and you can only shoot one at a time, but you can pick up these green crystals which let you shoot more shots at a time. which is a handy thing. You get a boomerang shot, which is really good at getting enemies that are just a space above you or such. The boomerang weapon can be a bit slow though when you're still low on green crystals. There's nothing saying that you have to pick up certain weapons, so you can avoid them if you really want to, but I kind of do recommend the boomerang over the blue pulse. The other weapon you can find is this really powerful beam. It's just this purple beam, and you get 16 green crystals when you pick it up because it just destroys everything in its path. The only problem with it is it's short range, so whether you pick it up or not is your decision. I recommend picking up the purple death beam because it kills everything really easily and it's rapid fire, so you don't have to wear away your finger jamming the fire button tons of times. The one thing you've probably noticed by now is that there's no extra lives counter anywhere on the screen. You get one life with 8 health points. Lose all those health points and it's game over and back to the start. There is actually a save and restore feature, and you can actually save and restore right when you die as well. The only thing is, it only saves at the beginning of levels, and it remembers how much health you had when you started the level. So if you save when you have like 1 or 2 units of health and then restore your game, unless you can get that health back up really quickly somehow, you're probably not going to survive much longer. So for all intents and purposes, losing all of your health is pretty much a death sentence and a restart the game sentence. So for that reason, it's a hard game. Though, it should be noted that there is a difficulty select, but it doesn't really do much. All it does is change how many coins you need to gain an extra life point. You can either set it to easy, which will give you 10, means you have to collect 10 coins to get an extra life point. You can set it to medium, which means you need 20 coins, or you can set it to hard, and that means you need 30 coins. And believe me when I say, there's not a lot of coins in this game. The game's separated into 3 different chapters, and in each one of those chapters, you're probably only going to find maybe 60, 70 coins, something around there. Maybe 80, I haven't really counted, but it's not a lot, so you can't rely on those coins to get your life back. Instead, you're probably going to be relying on the heart power-ups you see, but they're kind of rare too. So yeah, for all intents and purposes, just try not to get hit a lot. Actually, since I don't really have much to say about this game, I can actually give you a few tips that'll help you survive this game should you choose to play it. And the one big tip I can give you right off the bat is be patient. There's no time limit in this game, so you can take as much time as you need to get past certain parts. And believe me, some of the parts in this game, timing is everything. Some of the jumps, you really have to nail them right on if you want to make them. Certain times you'll actually want to trigger an enemy to appear and then wait for the enemy to get out of your way before you make a tricky jump. So there's things like that are going on. So learn the timing and learn to wait it out and just inch your way through certain sections so that you're not getting bombarded with enemies. Because that's another tip I have too, is that the enemies will only act if they're on the screen. If the enemy's not on the screen, the enemy's not going to move. This kind of creates an interesting situation where some of the enemies, specifically the flying ones, will actually get stuck at the edges of the screen as you try to get close to them so that you can shoot them. It's an interesting conundrum, and you can take advantage of it and shoot them while they're at the edge. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it works, I guess. The other enemy you want to be careful of are these things that pop out of the ground and then spit their tongue at you or something. They kind of look like these big monstrous plant things. I don't know. There's 2 ways you can go about getting rid of these things. Their attack is range limited, so you can actually, the moment you see it pop out of the ground, just immediately head in the other direction. But here's something that's actually safer to do. When you see one of those things pop out of the ground, just keep running. Don't react, don't respond to it, just keep moving. Because they can't actually hurt you unless they have their tongue sticking out at you, and it takes them a moment, so you can actually get behind them while they're getting ready to do that. Which means you'll have perfect time to get behind them, shoot them, and never have to worry about dealing with them from the front. Granted, there are some moments later in the game where you'll have several of them popping out of the ground at once, in which case you might get screwed, but oh well, live and learn. I will admit, though, that sometimes learning really isn't enough with this game because sometimes the controls are not responsive. Considering the type of gameplay you've got going, where everything's sectioned off in half-block increments, I guess what can you expect, really? So sometimes you'll push the jump button or the fire button and it just won't work for some mysterious reason. If you hold them, they'll work, but if you just tap them, that's when they sometimes don't work, and you know, that can be annoying. And the other thing too is, yeah, that waterfall really is really difficult to look at. There's some parts in this game where you really just have to go by feel, because you can't look at the screen, because the screen is so distracting in some of those cases. And actually, what the heck is that thing? No, seriously, what is that? It looks so familiar. Oh. If anyone knows what that is, let me know. Post that info on my website. So yeah, this game's got some flaws, and the gameplay isn't exactly perfect. Like, the standards of it don't really hold up to other platformers that were out at the time, but it's still an interesting piece of history, and it's still worth at least one playthrough. And it's not a long game, so it won't take too much of your time either. And actually, getting it running in DOSBox is pretty simple too. The only thing you have to remember is that it will go ridiculously fast if you don't set the cycles count to a fixed setting. So when you're running in DOSBox, I actually recommend a cycle setting of 3000. And, you know, you can make that higher or lower depending on if you want the game to go faster or slower. And other than that though, graphics filters in DOSBox really do make this game look better. In fact, the graphics filters almost always make anything 16 color look better. And this is actually another perfect example of a game that really benefits from DOSBox's key mapper. There's no joystick support in the game, but you can use the DOSBox key mapper to give yourself joystick support, and that's what I was capturing the footage with. I was playing with my gamepad for this PC, and it works pretty well. So that's what I recommend you do if you have a gamepad. If you don't, use the keyboard. Keyboard works perfectly fine, controls are easy, and that's it. So stay tuned for episode 12 of Ancient DOS Games, and I'll be digging into my 5¼ inch disc collection again, and don't worry, this time I did check ahead of time. I have the game working fine on my main system, so reviewing it is no problem. And as for what game it happens to be, let's just say that it recently had a remake released for the PlayStation Network and PlayStation Portable, and that it features a giant fighting robot with auto-aiming lasers. Now how cool is that? And if you still have no idea what game it is, you're just gonna have to stay tuned and find out.